Elliot Grayson leaned forward in his chair, the studio lights casting a harsh glow over his sharp features. His voice crackled with intensity as he jabbed a finger toward Karoline Leavitt's image on the split-screen monitor. "You're not just misguided, Karoline," he said, his tone dripping with disdain. "You're dangerous. A puppet dancing to the tune of outdated ideologies." Karoline's calm demeanor faltered for only a moment before she responded, her voice measured but firm. "I understand your frustration, Elliot, but name-calling doesn't solve anything." The audience erupted into murmurs, sensing the tension escalating. Behind the scenes, producers exchanged panicked glances. This wasn't supposed to happen, not during prime time. But Elliot was unstoppable now, fueled by years of bottled-up resentment and the adrenaline rush of live television. "You exploit young voters because it suits your agenda," he shot back, ignoring the flashing red light signaling him to wrap up. In that instant, something shifted. His words weren't just provocative, they were incendiary, and everyone watching knew it. Before the commercial break could save them, an executive stormed onto the set, microphone in hand. Her face was pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "Due to unforeseen circumstances, we regret to inform you that Elliot Grayson will no longer be part of our network moving forward." Elliot froze mid-sentence, his jaw slackening. The camera panned awkwardly between him and the stunned co-hosts. For a fleeting second there was silence. Deafening, suffocating silence. Then chaos erupted off-screen as stagehands scrambled to cut to a pre-recorded segment. Elliot sat motionless, the weight of what had just happened crashing down on him like a tidal wave. He felt exposed, vulnerable, and utterly powerless. Within minutes, clips of the explosive exchange flooded social media platforms. Hashtags like "Cancel Elliot Grayson" trends globally, accompanied by memes mocking his outburst. Some tweets praised him as a fearless truth-teller who dared to challenge hypocrisy. Others branded him arrogant, reckless, and out of touch. "Elliot Grayson is everything wrong with modern journalism," one critic tweeted venomously. "He's calling out truths others are too scared to say," countered a supporter. Amidst the digital storm, Elliot's phone buzzed incessantly with notifications. Each chime felt like another nail being hammered into his coffin. Claire, his wife, finally snatched the device from his hands. "Enough," she snapped, her eyes blazing. "You need to focus, Elliot, not on this circus, but on us." For once, as the dust settled backstage, the camera lingered on Elliot's face one last time before cutting away. His expression was unreadable, a mix of shock, disbelief, and something darker, more primal. It was the look of a man confronting the abyss, realizing too late that he might have pushed himself over the edge. For the first time in years, Elliot Grayson didn't know what to say. Words, the very tools he'd built his empire on, had betrayed him. By morning, talk shows dissected every syllable of Elliot's tirade. Pundits debated whether he was a martyr for free speech or a cautionary tale of unchecked ego. Fans rallied outside his Manhattan apartment, holding signs that read, "We stand with you," while detractors gathered nearby, chanting slogans about accountability. Karoline Leavitt released a brief statement, urging civility amid division. "Let's use this moment to reflect, not retaliate," she wrote. But reflection wasn't easy for Elliot. As public opinion fractured around him, so did his sense of self. Who was he without the spotlight? Was there even a version of himself left to salvage? These questions gnawed at him, setting the stage for the reckoning ahead. Elliot Grayson's ascent from a modest upbringing in Ohio to becoming one of cable news's most recognizable faces was nothing short of meteoric. He had clawed his way up, trading sleepless nights for breaking stories and sacrificing personal milestones for career milestones. His charm and razor-sharp wit made him a darling of progressive audiences, but behind every accolade lay a trail of compromises. "You think I wanted this life?" he once muttered during a rare moment of vulnerability to Claire years ago. "I didn't choose fame. It chose me." But now, as the world turned against him, those sacrifices felt hollow. The relentless ambition that once propelled him forward seemed more like a curse than a blessing. Behind closed doors, Elliot wrestled with an identity crisis. The polished persona he projected on air bore little resemblance to the man inside. A fractured soul grappling with insecurity and self-doubt. "Who am I if not that guy?" he whispered late at night, staring into the mirror. His public face demanded confidence, charisma, and unshakable conviction, but privately, he questioned whether any of it was real. Was he truly passionate about the causes he championed, or was he merely chasing validation? These doubts gnawed at him, growing louder with each passing day. At home, tension simmered beneath the surface. Claire, once his biggest supporter, now felt like a stranger in their sprawling Manhattan apartment. Her days were filled with silence, his absence palpable even when he was physically present. "You're never here," she said one evening, her voice trembling with frustration. "Not really. Your mind is always somewhere else." Their teenage daughter, Sophie, noticed too. Once, eager to emulate her father, she now watched him with wary eyes. During breakfast, she scrolled through her phone, pausing only to mutter, "Dad, do you even believe half the stuff you say on TV?" The question stung, cutting deeper than any headline ever could. Karoline Leavitt loomed large in Elliot's thoughts, her composed demeanor serving as both inspiration and irritation. She represented everything he despised about modern conservatism, yet secretly admired. Her ability to command respect without raising her voice infuriated him. "She's good," he admitted begrudgingly to Claire after watching one of Karoline's interviews. "Maybe too good," Claire replied dryly. "She's got everyone eating out of her hand, including you." Elliot bristled at the implication, but couldn't deny the truth. Karoline wasn't just a rival. She was a reflection of what he feared most: irrelevance. As the scandal unfolded, allies evaporated like morning mist. Sponsors terminated contracts, agents stopped returning calls, and friends hesitated to associate with him publicly. Even casual acquaintances distanced themselves, fearing guilt by association. "It's over, isn't it?" Elliot asked his longtime producer, Rachel, during a terse phone call. "I don't know what to tell you, Elle," she replied softly. "People are scared. They don't want this mess touching them." Her words hit like a punch to the gut. For the first time, Elliot understood the true cost of failure in the public eye: utter isolation. One evening, the family gathered for dinner, an increasingly rare occurrence. The atmosphere was tense, charged with unspoken grievances. "You were so unfair to Karoline," Sophie blurted out, slamming her fork onto the table. "She hasn't done anything wrong." Elliot stiffened, his jaw tightening. "You don't understand politics, Sophie. You're just a kid." "And you're just a hypocrite," she shot back, tears welling in her eyes. Claire intervened, her voice firm. "Enough. Both of you need to stop acting like children. Elliot, apologize. For all of our sakes." He opened his mouth to argue, but found no words. Instead, he stared down at his plate, shame washing over him. Despite the mounting pressure, Elliot refused to concede. In interviews, he doubled down, blaming canceled culture and media bias for his downfall. "They can't handle the truth," he told a sympathetic bartender during a late-night drink, but privately, doubt crept in. Late at night, he replayed the debate in his mind, cringing at his own words. Had he gone too far? Memories surfaced unbidden, moments where Elliot sacrificed integrity for ratings, a controversial guest booked solely for shock value, a story buried because it didn't align with sponsor interests. Each memory carried the weight of regret, haunting him like ghosts of choices past. "I sold my soul piece by piece," he murmured to himself, staring blankly at the ceiling. Sleep eluded Elliot as paranoia took hold. Every notification felt like an attack. Every glance from strangers a judgment. Shadows seemed to move in the corners of his vision, and whispers echoed in empty rooms. One night, unable to bear the silence, he wandered aimlessly through the house. Claire found him sitting on the floor of their daughter's bedroom, clutching a stuffed animal Sophie hadn't touched in years. "What are we doing, Claire?" he asked, his voice barely audible. She knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We're surviving, Elliot. But we can't keep going like this." Her words lingered as dawn broke, signaling the beginning of yet another uncertain day. The charity gala buzzed with an electric energy, its opulent chandeliers casting a golden glow over impeccably dressed attendees. Elliot Grayson stood near the bar, nursing a drink as his eyes darted around the room. He had hoped to avoid her, Karoline Leavitt, but fate had other plans. "Elliot," came a calm voice behind him. He turned to find Karoline approaching, flanked by reporters eager for drama. Cameras flashed like strobe lights, capturing their every move. "Well, this is awkward," Elliot muttered under his breath, forcing a tight smile. A reporter stepped forward, microphone in hand. "Karoline, what do you make of Elliot's comments about you?" Karoline paused, her gaze steady and composed. She exhaled softly before speaking, her tone measured but sincere. "I think we all say things in moments of passion that don't reflect who we truly are," she said, glancing briefly at Elliot. "Divisive rhetoric hurts everyone. It divides us when we should be working together." Her words hung in the air, sharp yet gentle. Then, almost imperceptibly, she added, "But I believe people can grow. We all have room to learn and evolve." Elliot felt the weight of her grace crash over him like a tidal wave. For once he was speechless, unable to summon a witty retort or deflecting remark. Her forgiveness, not overt but implied, shook him to his core. As the crowd dispersed, Elliot excused himself, his chest tightening with each step. Outside, the cool night air did little to ease the suffocating shame pressing down on him. Every word Karoline had spoken replayed in his mind, exposing cracks in the armor he'd worn for so long. He hailed a cab, then changed his mind and began walking aimlessly through the streets. The city's glittering skyline mocked him, reminding him of everything he'd lost, and everything he might never regain. Eventually, Elliot slid behind the wheel of his car, desperate to outrun the spotlight that pursued him even in solitude. He drove without direction, weaving through neon-lit avenues and shadowy side streets. Yet no matter how far he went, his thoughts raced faster than the engine. "What am I doing?" he whispered aloud, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. Memories of his outburst flooded back, mingling with images of Karoline's poised response. On impulse, Elliot found himself pulling up outside a modest house tucked away in a quiet neighborhood, the home where he'd grown up. It looked smaller now, weathered by time, but still familiar. Memories rushed back unbidden. His father tinkering with cars in the driveway, his mother humming hymns in the kitchen. They had sacrificed everything to give him a better life, and here he was, throwing it all away in pursuit of fleeting fame. Tears pricked his eyes as he sat in silence, the irony crushing him. All those years chasing success, only to lose sight of the values that defined him. Back in the car, Elliot finally let go. His shoulders shook as sobs racked his body, tears streaming down his face unchecked. It wasn't about her, he choked out between gasps. It was never about her. It was fear. Fear of being irrelevant, of failing, of losing control. For the first time he admitted the truth, not just to himself, but to the universe. His anger hadn't stemmed from ideology. It had been a shield, protecting him from confronting his deepest insecurities. As the storm of emotion subsided, a strange calm settled over Elliot. He wiped his face, taking slow, deliberate breaths. This moment of raw honesty marked a pivotal shift, a crack in the facade he'd built around himself. "I can fix this," he murmured, his voice trembling but resolute. "I have to fix this." For the first time in years, Elliot felt a flicker of hope. Redemption wouldn't come easily, but it was within reach, if he was willing to embrace vulnerability and confront the person he'd become. Elliot's emotional collapse outside his childhood home didn't stay private for long. A passerby captured a blurry photo of him in tears, and within hours it was everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, even late-night talk shows. Is this real vulnerability or just another PR move? One headline read, while another proclaimed, "Elliot Grayson's humanity on full display." The internet exploded into factions once again. Some praised his raw honesty, calling it a wake-up call about mental health in high-pressure industries. Others dismissed it as calculated manipulation, accusing him of orchestrating the moment to win back public sympathy. Claire scrolled through the comments on her phone, shaking her head. "People will twist anything," she muttered bitterly. Elliot sat slumped at the kitchen table, staring blankly at the wall. "I don't care what they think anymore," he said softly, though his voice betrayed a flicker of doubt. That evening, Claire placed a firm hand on Elliot's shoulder. "Enough hiding," she said. "We're going to fix this. Together." Sophie nodded, surprising both parents with her resolve. "You need help, Dad. Real help, not some PR spin." For the first time in years, Elliot felt a glimmer of hope. Not because of fame or accolades, but because his family stood by him. Together they scheduled therapy sessions and agreed to attend family counseling. "I'm sorry," Elliot whispered during their first session, his voice cracking. "For everything. Claire reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "We're here, Elliot, but you have to meet us halfway." Desperate for direction, Elliot swallowed his pride and reached out to Rachel, his former producer. To his relief, she answered. "You look like hell," Rachel said bluntly over coffee. "But I'm glad you called." He laughed despite himself. "I screwed up, Rach, big time." Rachel leaned forward, her tone softening. "Everyone screws up, Elle. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Encouraged, Elliot sought advice from other mentors, including an old journalism professor who had always believed in him. Each conversation chipped away at the walls he'd built around himself, reminding him of why he'd pursued this career in the first place. One mentor, a retired anchor named Margaret, suggested something radical: a memoir. "Writing isn't just cathartic, it's powerful," she explained. "It forces you to confront your truths, warts and all, and right now people need authenticity more than ever." Elliot hesitated. "What if no one cares? Or worse, what if they tear me apart again?" Margaret smiled knowingly. "Then let them, but at least you'll know you tried." Inspired and terrified, Elliot bought a notebook that same day. Late at night, Elliot poured his thoughts onto paper, unfiltered and raw. He wrote about the sacrifices he'd made, the friendships neglected, the values compromised, all in pursuit of success. "I became someone I barely recognized," he scribbled one evening. "A man defined not by conviction, but by ratings." As weeks passed, the process became therapeutic. Through writing, he began to untangle the mess of his public persona and private self, rediscovering fragments of the idealistic young journalist he used to be. One afternoon, Elliot picked up the phone, his heart pounding. "Karoline, it's Elliot Grayson," he began awkwardly. I owe you an apology." There was a pause before she replied, her tone cautious but kind. "Go on." "I was wrong," he admitted, his voice trembling. "Not just about what I said, but how I said it. You didn't deserve that." To his surprise, Karoline accepted his apology graciously. "Thank you for saying that, Elliot. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong." Weeks later, Karoline extended an olive branch, inviting Elliot to join a bipartisan panel aimed at fostering dialogue between opposing viewpoints. "This could be good for you," she said, "and maybe for others too." Nervous but determined, Elliot agreed. On the day of the event, he took a deep breath before stepping onto the stage, acutely aware of the stakes. "Let's focus on solutions, not divisions," he said during his opening remarks, earning tentative applause. For the first time in years, he felt aligned with his purpose. Slowly but surely, perceptions began to shift. Critics noted Elliot's newfound humility, while supporters applauded his willingness to engage openly. Social media buzzed with hashtags like second chances and authentic leadership. Even Sophie noticed the change. "You seem lighter, Dad," she remarked one evening. "I feel lighter," Elliot admitted, smiling faintly. Though challenges remained, Elliot embraced this new chapter with cautious optimism. Redemption wasn't easy, but it was worth every step. Elliot, Claire, and Sophie sat in a circle of chairs, their postures stiff and guarded, as the therapist introduced herself with a warm smile. "Let's start by sharing one thing you'd like to change," she suggested gently. Claire spoke first, her voice trembling but resolute. "I want us to stop pretending everything's fine when it's not." Sophie chimed in, her tone laced with frustration. "And I want Dad to actually listen, not just nod while thinking about work." Elliot swallowed hard, guilt etched across his face. "I want to be better." For both of you. The sessions were raw and often painful, dredging up years of neglect and resentment. But for the first time, they faced these wounds together, inching toward healing. Reconciliation didn't happen overnight. There were moments of tension, raised voices, slammed doors, but also small victories. One evening, Elliot surprised Claire with flowers, simply because. "I know it doesn't fix everything," he admitted sheepishly, "but I wanted to try." Claire smiled faintly, accepting them. "It's a start." With Sophie, progress came through shared activities. A movie night here, a walk in the park there, she began opening up again, sharing snippets of her life without prompting. "It feels lighter," Sophie confessed one afternoon. "Like we're actually a family now." When Elliot's memoir hit shelves, no one expected it to resonate so deeply. Critics hailed it as a masterclass in vulnerability and a mirror held up to modern fame. Readers connected with his unfiltered reflections on ambition, failure, and redemption. Grayson has given us permission to be human, one reviewer wrote. Sales soared, landing the book atop bestseller lists. For once, Elliot felt pride, not for accolades, but for creating something meaningful. The memoir sparked conversations far beyond its pages. Talk shows invited guests to discuss mental health and societal pressures. Influencers shared personal stories inspired by Elliot's journey. "This isn't just his story, it's ours too," said one fan during an online panel. Even peers reached out, thanking him for shining a light on struggles they'd kept hidden. "You've reminded me why I got into this business," a fellow journalist told him over coffee. Elliot's participation in Karoline's bipartisan panel marked a turning point in his career. Together they tackled divisive topics with empathy and nuance, earning praise from audiences across the political spectrum. During one session, Elliot leaned forward earnestly. "We don't have to agree on everything to find common ground." Karoline nodded, adding, "And sometimes listening is the bravest thing we can do." Their partnership became a symbol of unity, challenging stereotypes and fostering understanding. Karoline's role in the panel elevated her profile, showcasing her ability to bridge divides. Media outlets lauded her as the leader we need right now. "She makes collaboration look easy," Elliot remarked during an interview. "But trust me, it's not." Their mutual respect deepened, though neither ventured into anything beyond professional admiration. Still, their dynamic inspired others to seek partnerships rooted in empathy rather than rivalry. Slowly, media narratives shifted. Headlines moved away from scandal and sensationalism, focusing instead on Elliot's growth and the broader implications of his journey. Grayson's evolution reminds us that accountability isn't punishment, it's opportunity, wrote one columnist. Critics noted how his willingness to confront flaws had redefined what it meant to be a public figure. "He's showing us that authenticity sells. Not just books, but hope," another observed. Online, influencers amplified the message. Hashtags like "authenticity matters" and "vulnerability is strength" trends globally, sparking movements around mental health and self-acceptance. "Elliot's story made me realize I don't have to be perfect to matter," tweeted one user. Activists organized virtual forums, encouraging people to share their own journeys. "We're rewriting the rules," declared a popular influencer. "Success isn't about perfection, it's about connection." As months passed, Elliot found fulfillment in unexpected places. He mentored aspiring journalists, urging them to prioritize integrity over ratings. "Your voice matters more than your numbers," he told a young reporter during a workshop. At home, he savored quiet moments with Claire and Sophie, cherishing the bonds they'd rebuilt. One evening, as he tucked Sophie into bed, she looked up at him. "You're happier now, aren't you?" He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Yeah, kiddo, I think I am." Elliot had finally learned that true success wasn't measured by fame or accolades. It was defined by the lives he touched and the love he nurtured. And for the first time in years, he felt whole. Elliot Grayson's journey through the highs and lows of fame became a testament to its dual-edged nature. The spotlight had amplified his brilliance, but also exposed his flaws in glaring detail. Yet, amid the chaos, he discovered something profound. Redemption wasn't about erasing mistakes. It was about owning them. "Fame doesn't define you," he once told a young journalist during a mentoring session. "It magnifies who you already are, the good and the bad." His story resonated far beyond headlines, reminding others that courage and humility could turn even the harshest scrutiny into an opportunity for growth. Over time, Elliot transformed from a divisive provocateur into a symbol of resilience. His willingness to confront his inner demons inspired countless fans and peers alike. "He showed us it's okay to be flawed," said one fan at a book signing, "and that's what makes him real." Through vulnerability, Elliot redefined strength, not as invincibility, but as the ability to rise after falling. His evolution proved that authenticity could bridge divides, fostering understanding where none seemed possible. Despite lingering criticism, Elliot remained steadfast in staying true to himself. He refused to pander to expectations or chase fleeting approval, instead focusing on values that mattered most: integrity, connection, and purpose. "I'm not perfect," he admitted during a podcast interview, "but I'm trying. That's all any of us can do." His unwavering commitment to authenticity earned him respect, even from former critics. It was a lesson in perseverance, a reminder that staying grounded amidst scrutiny required more than talent, it demanded character. At Sophie's high school graduation, she stood before a sea of proud parents and nervous graduates clutching her notes tightly. As she began speaking, her voice wavered, but grew stronger with each word. "My dad taught me something important," she said, glancing toward Elliot in the audience. "Success isn't about winning arguments or being right. It's about building bridges, because when we connect, we grow." Elliot felt tears welling up, overwhelmed by the realization that his journey had shaped not just him, but those he loved most. As applause filled the auditorium, Elliot sat quietly, letting the moment wash over him. For years, he'd chased validation under the harsh glare of fame. Now, surrounded by family and friends, he understood what truly mattered. Peace wasn't found in accolades or headlines. It came from meaningful connections, honest reflection, and living with purpose. Claire reached over, squeezing his hand gently. "You did it, Elle. You found your way back." He smiled softly, nodding. For the first time in years, Elliot Grayson felt whole. Not as a celebrity, but as a person.